and worship is what we do. We must go to that
Good
place
morning. Good
before we can
morning. I know it's really good morning, but I'm saying good morning because it's been a morning. It
And I'm going
definitely
to say
has.
good morning, good afternoon, and good day for all those in different time zones.
Yes, it is about 11:30 a.m. Central Time, and
Uh
this
huh.
is the We Missed It podcast on IntellectualRadio.com. And you know how I always start and say, it's podcast time. It's the fun of the week. But anyway, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad it's Sunday. Was so looking forward to talking to you as always. How about you? How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's Black History Month, and I'm feeling everything black. Just being very honest. Not even going to sugarcoat it.
Did you wear black?
I didn't wear black, but that doesn't mean the feeling isn't there. Hey, listen, don't call me out on my cream, my white. Okay, just you could
You,
have left
you
that
look
between
good.
us.
You look crisp.
Some viewers can't see us, so they, that you
Well,
could.
if the viewers would like to see you in that wonderful outfit, very crisp, very clean, very pristine, they can just go right now and go to YouTube. And we are streaming live on IntellectualRadio.com. And they can get a good look at that beautiful outfit, those wonderful glasses, and that smile that you radiate. So go ahead, people.
And
Get
when
in
you
there.
when you go to intellectualradio.com, it is We Missed It podcast.
Yes.
So, anyway, um,
So if you were feeling everything black this week, what were you feeling? Black-ish, black people, black culture, black music. What kind of black you feeling?
well, it was just everything. It's like we have come so far, but it
Mm-hmm.
does seem like every time we take two steps forward, we take
Mm-hmm.
one back. I won't say two back because
Mm-hmm.
I do feel more positive about where we are today,
Mm-hmm.
meaning just, black people, the race, um,
Mm-hmm.
than I did maybe 3 years ago.
Oh,
Maybe 5 years ago. So I don't, the saying is two steps forward, two steps back. So I'm going to say two steps forward, one step back.
okay. So 3 to 5 years ago, are we talking politics or are we talking people?
I think it's more in general.
Okay.
Politics would certainly be a part of it, but I just think it's
Yeah.
more in general. I mean, little things. I mean, and for me, it's the little things. It's the little things we encounter in society every day. It's not like major stuff, but like this morning, I was watching television and I was watching the news. It wasn't even a big deal. And I saw Iman Shumpert on television because he's here. And just to remind you, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's the one who won Dancing with the Stars this year.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I'm not familiar. So yeah, bring me
yeah.
up to speed.
Okay. So he won Dancing with the Stars. He was the one
Mm-hmm.
that was, I think now for all the people out there who really follow the basketball, I kind of follow it. So I think I'm right on this. At first, I
Oh,
was
you're
giving
talking.
him At first, I was giving him to Detroit, but that's not true. He's from Cleveland. I do believe that he was on the team. He was a basketball player on the Cleveland Cavaliers when Bronny Braun won. And yes, it is LeBron James. I just call him Bronny Braun because I like him.
So just for those that are listening, I'm totally ignorant to sports.
And
So
I'm
this
totally
is
into
good.
sports. I'm totally
Yeah.
into
So this is
sports.
yeah.
So
So welcome
anyway,
to
the
our
point
personality.
is that he was on the television today and he was dancing and he's from here. That's the significance of it. He's from here and
Oh.
they have a Dancing with the Stars taping today uh, that they're doing. And so they were showing him at his alma mater, showing him at his school, and they were showing his friends. And the reason it struck me, I guess, it was because not only was it good to see him, but just the way he's like trying to see how to say this and not sound ridiculous, but he's just black. He's just a black guy. He doesn't look super anything. Just a great guy. He had his braids. He had his friends there. They were talking about him, making fun of his dancing because I guess he's been dancing for a while, and they were
Mm-hmm.
making fun of him, and it was so funny because he sat in there with his friends, and they all just looked like they were young guys from the neighborhood that grew up, didn't have to make any real significant change to be recognized. And I'm not used to seeing, even today, still, usually when I'm on if I see a black person like him on television, it's because they're interviewing somebody who's on the scene of a crime. In this
Okay.
case, they were showing him. He still looked like himself, looked like he came from kind of like, came from the hood, but he was on the TV for something positive. It was fun. I'm not used
Okay.
to seeing that, and I liked it. Normally,
Mhm.
when I see people that look like him on TV, they're in the scene of a crime, and somebody done shoved a mic in his face, and you know, he's got to talk. So the fact that he was being interviewed about that it just gave me a good feeling to see it, and that he could just fully be himself and be
You
accepted.
felt refreshed
It
about
was
his visual.
I did. And speaking of that, I also see a lot of black experts, African American experts, black on TV now. When we're talking about mainly COVID, but other things, it could be real estate, whatever small little segment they're going to do. I just been seeing a lot more colored people, and so that's part of the two steps forward. Um,
Okay.
Even that Amanda lady, you remember the lady Amanda Gorman? She was the one who was delivered the poem at the inauguration when Joe Biden
Oh, okay.
won. Yeah,
Yeah, I do
so
remember.
yeah, so you see these things, but then showing like the one step back. So after she was recognized for being so great in delivering that poem, a couple of days later, I want to say maybe it was even a whole full month, but the police followed her to her home and said she looked suspicious. Literally,
Really?
yeah, literally. She
Wow.
was
I
walking
didn't even
home.
know that.
Yeah, she lived
Right.
in LA. She was walking home,
Mm-hmm.
and the police followed her. And I won't even call it the police, it was the security. It's always the security. You know how you have the
Uh-huh.
security if you live in a nice neighborhood and and the grounds have security. So the
Yeah,
security
yeah.
followed her.
Oh,
And when I guess they confronted her and she had to ask them why, it was because uh, she they said she looked suspicious. So she had to pull out her key fob, show them that she had, clearance to get into the building on her own and blah blah. So it's just, I mean, it's countless episodes. It's this thing with the NFL going on now where they don't have enough black coaches. I mean, I'm not going to go all off into my soapbox, but it really is. It's like it's two steps forward, one step back.
yeah.
So,
Well, absolutely. We definitely haven't come as far as we thought we have.
yeah. So, that's one of the things that have been on my mind. Anything for you? Does that bring up anything for you at all?
Not really. I mean, I'm in agreement with you that as far as we're concerned culturally, since we're speaking Black history, um, when you think about, the movement overall, whether, like you said, whether it's culturally how we present ourselves visually, whether it's our platforms that we are now being able to, get invited onto, things are not. So for me, and I know, I can only talk about for me, I was not conscious of Black history being a thing or Black History Month until I came to America and got in the public school system. And so I dated back to my first reference of it is going into Black History Month, Martin Luther King is the symbol, and talking about the march and the movement. And as I've matured recently, honestly, it's in latter years that I'm understanding that, there was so much more going on inside of the movement with so many other people,
Hello.
whether,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
whether it
Mm-hmm.
was poets or, different people, actors. So if I just go back to thinking about Martin Luther King, and, famous speech, mountaintop, I feel like no, culturally, economically, socioeconomically, we have not arrived on equal ground.
Okay, so hold on. Hold on. This brings to mind something. Let me ask you this. You
Yeah,
said that when you came here, in other words, you weren't aware of actually Black history until you came over here, correct?
correct.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What, when did you realize you were Black?
Right.
At what
That's
point?
that's the real
At
question.
what point did you know you were Black?
I realized I was Black not because Black History Month showed up, not because we did presentations or we were shown the speeches. I realized I was Black when I was preparing for testing in the Chicago public school system, and we had to fill out the box, the ethnic box.
That's when you realized it.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, well, I did not recognize it as Black. I did not know to circle the Black or to etch the Black. I was looking for Islander, Caribbean. I was looking for me.
May I ask who enlightened you? Who enlightened you on that?
Well, I'm gonna tell you. So I think I did like Pacific Islander or something back in the day. That was the thing. So anyway, I went home and I shared it with my mom, and she was just like, "Oh, no, you're not a Pacific Islander." And I was like, "Okay, but I'm from Belize. So what is that?" And she said, "Well, this is America. And in America, there's two lanes. There's Black and white. You're not white, you're Black. So from this point on, whenever you go to school, you check the box that says Black. And that is how you will identify."
Not to mention there's an A to Z.
Yeah.
You know, you got all kind of stuff in the middle, but it's
yeah, I was like, oh. And I just didn't really fully understand that. I was like, well, what is this thing? So I went back just understanding. So I think in the last year or two during politics, you and I had spoken about it because the previous president was in office.
Right.
And we started having so many racial issues and identifiers, and that really helped me. It didn't help me. It took me back to that conversation, and I was glad my mother had it with me because it gave me an understanding to be able to identify what America was founded on, and that helped me to bring it all full circle. So thank you, Mommy, for the harsh lesson that I was in one box, and my Caribbean background had nothing to do with anything.
It didn't even matter because once you had a drop of color, you're Black.
That's it.
That's right.
And it's funny because that's something I was speaking to a client about yesterday. They did the one of the DNA tests.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and your client did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she was talking about all the things that showed up on it. And I guess that's the full circle for me is that if anyone in America does a DNA test, my client is from the Caribbean. I'm from the Caribbean. So I told her I would have never done a DNA test probably because I feel like even in our own culture, when people met me as a young woman, as a little girl, they didn't even understand back then. We were not yet traveled as we are now, versed as we are now. Exactly. That all these different people of color live in all parts of the world.
Yeah.
And it was like that. Here came the Cosby Show, and here came Denise, and here came, Hampton. Right. And so people started then going, oh, okay, there's different people, different places. So there was that go back to Africa phase. Remember that?
I do.
Right? And so I would
But that's why I say it's an A to Z. It's so many things in between the Black and the white. Say the Black is A and the Z is white. You got all these alphabet in between that represents everything else. So I don't understand how we can just go, white, Black. We were not as we didn't have the communication. We didn't have the social visuals that we have now. Yeah. Now you get on, it's the awareness. We used to deny it. We yet never recognized it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that to me, is explanatory, but I just used to be like, well, I don't have to go all the way to Africa. I'm going to stop in Belize because the boat stopped there.
Right. Well, listen, for me, that same question, it's very odd. I realized that I know it's a crazy question, but I realized I was Black probably at the age, I want to say about 5, anywhere between 4 and 6. And the worst part about it, and even though I don't have this specific memory, my brother told me, and my brother, I believe him because my brother has a great memory about things that happened long ago. Anytime, my mother would always say, anytime we wanted to know what happened or who somebody was, oh, ask Mikey, he knows. But he told me, Tricia, this is like hard to even say it on here, but he told me that when I was really, really young, I thought I was white.
I can see it.
And I do.
I can see that could happen to you.
So, Tricia, look, I have to try to defend that comment because I'm like, are you
Why do you have to
serious?
defend it though?
Because I
Why?
can't even, well, first of all, my skin was a little lighter than it is now. And
Correct.
my dad, I probably thought my dad was white and he was not
You
white.
probably did
I think I
because
did.
we were not talking about
So
in our houses,
here
right?
we weren't. And so here's the thing. When we were watching TV, I mainly only saw white people and their skin was light. And I knew my skin was very light. So he told me that he had to straighten me out on that. Then wait a minute, it gets even worse. It gets worse. There's more to the story.
He
It's
had
so
to straighten
bad.
you out.
He
Okay.
straightened me out on that. And I remember the reason I said around, I have this as around between 4 and 6 is because I do remember having some conversations with him about race, even that early on. And I remember the setting. And it was in our apartment where we first lived, and we had a 19-inch color TV there. And I just remember sitting in the room, and it was always my brother and me. And so I do remember the setting of these conversations. But here's the other thing. Not only did I think I was white, do you realize that at one time I told him that I thought white people looked better than black people? And do you
Of
know what
course you did.
he told me? He
Yes.
said, "Not in person. You just ain't seen none of them yet." He said, "You just seen all those good-looking white people on TV. So you
Yes.
think they look
Yes.
better than we do."
Yes.
He was like, "Oh, no, no, no. Wait till you see them in person." And it's just so funny the innocence, the ignorance for just not knowing, And so I think it was around right at that time that I realized I was black. And as I went to school, then, and so, like I said, that was around 5. And then when I went to kindergarten, of course, all the kids were black, and we had the white teacher. So it really began to sink in there. But the truthful, the real came talking to him, my brother, who was only 2 years older than me.
He brought it to your
He
recognition.
brought it home, as he brings so many things home. He brought it on home for me. So
Well, interestingly enough, I'd like to just kind of go back to you saying, I thought that I was white.
I
My brother brought it to
did.
my attention. You said, hey, my dad is fair. You didn't say fair, but we understand it to be
He
fair
very
complected.
light, and he also had the
But
different texture hair. I didn't know.
yeah, and when we're younger, well, for you, when you were younger, you were living in a cold city, so you're inside most of the time. You weren't going to brown up, right? So
Exactly.
that was happening. But
Hmm.
I wanted to share something with you about when you are recognizing something because it is what is shown to you. So you said you mostly saw on television, right?
Hmm.
People that were white.
Yeah, I
So
did.
that's why we are now having the conversation about inclusion, because a person cannot feel good about whom they are, or they can't recognize who they are, accomplishments of different cultures, a variety of people, unless they see it. So I, from being from Belize, as I came to the States, interestingly enough, is when everything became three-dimensional for me. I have a cousin, an older cousin in my family that is actually in my mom's generation, my first cousin, her first cousin, I should say. And I called her Aunt Marilyn, and she was married to a
Oh, I know
Caucasian gentleman.
Maryland. Okay.
Uh-huh. You know
I
Marilyn
know
quite well,
right.
right?
Hmm.
The life of our, look, the party of our life,
That's
right?
right.
Caribbean queen, as we would call her, because she was always dancing and performing. But she was married to my Uncle Ron, and he was white. That was her first husband, and she ended up with my Uncle Rich, her second husband, who was fantastic. But I went over to their house, girl, for an event, regular weekend of good times.
Uh-huh.
And Uncle Rich's family was visiting from Wisconsin, the cheese place, and a little girl in the kitchen was staring at me, but I didn't think anything of it. So I waved across the room, and her mother came over and apologized. This was a relative of his. And I was startled. I didn't know what she was apologizing for. She told me and that this little girl had not ever seen anybody black up close. She had only seen us
Yes.
on television.
Yes.
Christine,
Yes.
I was in my 30s.
But
I was in my
Tricia,
early 30s.
I'm raising my hand because I have something to say. Listen, it's
Yeah,
the same way. So, I've been in sales for most of all my career. And
yeah.
up until, and I really mean this is 2022. So I'm going to say up until about like 2008, kid you not, if something happened and I had to go on a sales call, maybe like in a Barrington,
Mhm.
somewhere up north, a northern suburb, uh,
Mhm.
I and I sometimes would have a gentleman with me who was an engineer who was kind of an expert in something. So we'd be doing, working together.
Mhm.
And little kids would be staring at us if we went into like a McDonald's or somewhere just to grab a coffee or to
Mhm.
kind of strategize on a sale. You'd maybe stop at a restaurant for a minute
Mhm.
and talk before you go to the sales call. And we would notice that little kids would be staring at us and we had no idea why. And we surmised we probably did this happened maybe about 5 times in a year at the most. But we surmised by the fifth time, you know what? These kids have never seen a black person. And that's why they were looking like that because he
Mhm.
had more color than me. And, right now I have enough color where people could, you could still see that I'm not Caucasian. And that's what they were staring at because we were just that far different from what they were used to seeing. We didn't have blonde hair or whatever, the straight long hair, whatever we
The
were,
identifiers, yes,
whatever the
social
right,
identifiers.
whatever the
Yeah.
identifiers are, we didn't have them, and so they would just be staring and not. And here's what's interesting: it wasn't even in a mean way; it was just in a curious way. It was like that kind of thing. So
So
it's
my question for you is, with that recollection and that realization, do you think that you may have benefited in any way from being lighter complected through your corporate America experience?
You know what? I am thinking, even probably so, even if I didn't
Mhm.
realize it. And
Mhm.
what I feel is though it makes me wonder what some people do go through. And I'll tell you why I say that. If I think it's benefited me in some way and I haven't had many benefits at all, what are other people experiencing? I mean, still today at work, Tricia, I make sure my email message is firm, very clearly written, no grammatical errors, and I leave to question nothing. That means when you finish reading that email, I've left nothing to question. You know exactly what I'm saying because I feel the need to be that credible at work.
Why? But
Still
why?
because my people are not a lot of times in powerful positions, and I
Uh
need
huh.
for anyone who is in a powerful position to understand my value so I can keep my
Okay.
job
Okay.
and so I can
And
be
and I
thought of for a promotion.
and I think in this world that becomes the question. You see people accomplishing so much on so many levels, and the question would be, do they still have to code switch? Because that's code switching,
Yes.
right?
Oh, it
So
is.
you have to,
I
yeah, you
do.
have to
I
take the
definitely code
marker.
switch. Right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
So we were brought up in a generation where we had to be told, and it had to be brought to our awareness that code switching is a thing, and we needed to know
And
how
we
to do it. They
really,
didn't
yeah.
call it that,
Yes.
right?
And that
But this new
yeah.
generation, yeah, go ahead.
No, no, no. It just reminded me of a conversation that I had earlier this week with one of my friends, and he was telling me about his experience um, at work. And at the time that he was telling me he was doing his version of what I was doing, except for he was in a more of a labor position. I'm more in a corporate setting. But now that I'm talking to you, he was doing the same thing I was doing. He just didn't have a term for it. It was code switching.
Correct, because we were taught that early,
Mm-hmm.
like going back to the box that I had to check at school with the black.
Yes.
The other thing that was brought to my attention was that when I first relocated, I still had an accent, right? And
Yep.
so my peers, the kids, they taunted me. It was a source of bullying for me. Why do you sound that way?
Mm-hmm.
Why is your hair curly? Curly wasn't texture wasn't a thing then, and I had
Yeah,
to
it
go
was not.
home. No, and I went home from being bruised, from falling, from running, and then my mother was like, "You can't continue to speak that way," and I was constantly corrected until I was articulate to a standard,
Which is how
right?
you are today.
Correct. So a lot of times people are like, "You don't sound like you're foreign." I was not. That was not going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Because my mother needed for me to fit in. And so I just
Of
think that
course.
we all experience it, and we got messages about it, but we didn't even know what we were getting. And that's the
Exactly.
disgust sometimes for some people, is that we've moved into a world where that consciousness, you don't want that pressure on people, but you still would like to see some awareness that, we can get on in there and do what we need to do,
Yeah, and I
right?
want, is that subliminal? Where nobody actually tells you something, but you still know it. I'm not sure what that might not be the right definition, but I'm with you in the sense that y- some things no one actually preaches to you, but somehow you get the message that this is what you need to do, and that this may help to form or shape your image, in your
Yeah.
favor, to those,
Well,
to the powers that be.
it's a definite thing, Chrissy, and it goes back to our first podcast. We knew not to get pregnant.
Yep.
We knew we had to graduate high school. We knew
Yeah.
that we were supposed to date nice young men. So if they weren't nice, we didn't tell
We,
anybody we knew them. Keeping it real and
that is
100.
so true.
So I mean, it's the same kind of
Talking to
message,
them
right?
on the low.
Yeah. So we just talk culture.
Yeah.
And I'll just share this real quick. I have in some ways felt like I benefited a little bit from how I looked in a hairstyling world.
Okay.
Because when I became a hairstylist, it was still two different worlds, white and black, right? And our black culture did hair one way, and our Caucasian culture did it a separate way. And I chose to take the path of training on the other side. And I remember specifically going into a break room and standing around. Usually it would be one or two.
No, wait a minute. You said take training the other way. So that means to take the Caucasian
I
training?
trained in the white world.
Oh, you
I
train. Okay. So what you
Yeah.
meant was you can train under blacks, basically, or you can train under whites.
Because correct. Back then we
Okay.
were not just cultural division, but departmentalized. So you had to pick a specialty. You were either going to be
okay.
a colorist, a cutter. You understand?
Okay.
Right. So I was working in a very prominent salon, and it was an international space learning facility. And I remember being in a break room. It was just one black stylist on staff, one black colorist, and myself. And I was in the break room with all the other people. So with it being from another country, an international business, it was international people working there. And what startled me was one day as I was back there, I noticed that some of your conversations were colored and about color. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
They were identifying the social not norms.
Yes. Yes.
And I was moving around, and then it hit them because I was so quiet, and I was gray at that point. Nobody saw me as being in the space hearing them. And when one of the young ladies realized they were exposed because I'm standing there,
Yeah, you're looking.
She said very flippantly, "You're not really black, are you, Tricia? Because I heard you're foreign."
Now here's that right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stop right there.
Yeah.
That really black.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not really black.
Yeah. I've gotten that. I've gotten that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not really black.
So if you take the really and then you just highlight it and you put your quotes around it, what do you think they mean when they say really black?
They mean you're black, but you're not the typical black. You're not like them.
But you're not defining typical or really. Define it, Chrissy. What's wrong with you? Come on. I mean, come on already. You're not
for real?
Serve it up, for real. I mean,
you know that like you ain't a nigga.
Oh. And again, what is that? Because that's crazy. You know what I'm saying?
It's what they associate. Okay, look, Tree, to break it on down real. I mean, like this morning, as I was watching the news and I was telling you about the guy I saw, the dancing guy, what I also saw was a small snippet where this guy, now I don't know how much you've been watching the news, but this goes back into what we're saying. This guy, Joe Rogan, I think is his name. I mean, I didn't think we were going to talk about this, so forgive me if I don't have the exact right name. But he's got this podcast on Spotify. They said for the last however long, 7 to 9 years, he's been using a derogatory term. Now, I will tell you, they said it was so derogatory that they wouldn't say it on television. And I guess somebody could probably Google it right now. I didn't look it up what the guy was saying. What I assume it was possibly was nigger or something having to do with blacks, but it was really bad. So now they're having to go back and delete upwards of 70 podcasts of episodes of his podcast where he's been saying this. But Tricia, this is recently. This is
Correct.
recently within the past 7 to 9 years. So that's like up from maybe last year. Maybe okay, this is 2022. Matter of fact, I'm even giving 2021. Maybe he didn't know not to say it in 21, but let's just give him from 2020. So if you take it from 2020 and you say he's been saying it for the past 7 to 9 years, we're talking about he was saying it in 2011 up until 2020, and no one flagged it on Spotify. That dude, we don't talk like that.
That's what I'm saying. There wasn't going to be any flagging because it was going to continue to slip. The only reason why they're even noticing it now is because people meaning those celebrities who actually have visibility decided to call it out and say, well, if you're not going to see it, you're not going to acknowledge it, we, for our own integral reasons, will remove ourselves from that platform. So that first artist removed himself. My apologies.
Right. Then another lady,
here, right?
India Arie.
And she said for integral reasons. So until you started making a point of it, we were going to, and it goes back to the last 10, 11 years. That is the point I was making when we first started talking. And I did ask you, Chrissy, is it political? Because it is still a social norm.
It is that we still have to do this. This is 2022. This man was probably saying this about a year ago at the most, maybe 2 years ago. And they were letting that go by. And I'm going to tell you what else it reminds me of. I never talked about this with anyone, but real quick, do you remember when there was that big scandal with Dancing with the Stars, and they had the black guy who was that time the Bachelor, and he was dating, or I think as it turns out, he was going to be settling down or choosing this white lady, and she was a lady who had some history. And in her history, it might have been on social media, she had posted something where I don't know if they were dressing in blackface or they're doing something that definitely would indicate prejudice. Okay, they saw that in her history. They bring it to him. That makes the host, Chris Harrison, who was the host at the time, have to start doing interviews because they're getting bad PR because it's a controversy that this black man who's the Bachelor, he's getting ready to pick, whoever's going to win the season or whoever he's going to choose, basically. She's a white lady. When they look in her history, maybe she's displaying characteristics or displaying herself as someone that's not prejudiced, because possibly she's not today, but back then, which was only about 2 years ago, she was. And so that's making this guy, Chris Harrison, have to pipe in as a spokesperson for the show and say things. He gets on a podcast or some interview. I forget what it was that he was on. And he's on with the only black bachelorette that we had. Her name was Rachel. And you know what he told her? He told her that he was defending this girl for having these racial things in her history. And he told her, he said, I understand it's not okay. But what I'm asking you is, was it okay then? It was only 2 years ago. It was only 2 years ago. So he was actually arguing a point that because she was doing blackface or participating in whatever obviously prejudiced behavior she was participating in and put it on social media, that basically that was acceptable 2 years ago, but it's not today.
Right. So for those who can't see you, I can. So you're speechless and your arms are open. And you're like, what? WTF? WTF! Exclamation!
Because
right?
This was still just like 2019, 2020.
Yeah. So to bring it full circle, though, he lost his job, right?
He did lose his job.
Okay.
He lost his job.
Bringing it full circle with my comment regarding working in that salon space, I quit my job. And I made a conscious decision as a person that I was not interested in working anywhere where anyone saw me as what I didn't identify with, no matter how much I
Right.
wanted
It
to
just doesn't feel
be
good.
relevant
Yeah.
in that craft.
Doesn't
So
feel
I
good.
think overall we have to make that decision because, whether it's the N word with the ER or the N word with the A at the end, the question still becomes under those categories, there's definitions. They think nigger is one thing and nigga is another. That's why some people want to do it in music and in
Yeah,
conversation.
and they say it's a
And
loving,
it's all good,
right.
right? And
Right.
then if you chase an Ahmaud Arbery and you're using ER, they're saying
You're
we're being
prejudiced.
antagonized and prejudiced. So I think if all of us sit down, we'll realize that there was a time that you became aware of who you are. And once you became aware, did you choose a lane? So if you're thinking now, my family's culturally diverse, all kinds of different people. So is yours. You've got white, you've got whatever.
Oh, very. We're very diverse. As
Right?
a matter of fact, let me just hold your point. Just want to say this one thing. I only have two people in my family that I know of, little cousins, around my age or younger, that married a black person.
Okay, bam, right? So my family's extremely diverse. And so with us being extremely diverse, it is clear that we have intermingled with other cultures. I have people living as far as Ireland, right?
Wow.
That's far
That
to me.
is. Oh, yeah.
I have family that lives in, South Florida, right? Canada. And those people are married to other races. And so just bringing it full circle, I think that it shouldn't matter at this point, and this is where we've become blurred lines, like Robin Thicke's song says. We get in our relationships and we choose people, hopefully, because we bumped into them and they're interesting, right?
Exactly.
And they fit our soul profile, and not because of that stereotype that it's better on the other side. Anything better than black, right? So my thing is, once you get to that point, what affects me and what I want to see always is know who you are, know what your culture is immediately in your family and how the world sees you, and continue to cherish it and continue to represent it in the best way forward was the silent message you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it affected how we spoke. It affects what we choose to wear. It affects everything. So that, to me, is where Black history hits the point for me.
Okay. Yeah. Because it affects the writing. It affects for me, how I dress, how I wear my hair, everything.
Correct. Because my mom had to tell me every day, don't speak this way, because at the end of the day, when you become a young adult, you want to be able to be hireable, right?
Of course.
You want to be able to be let into certain environments. And at that point, how you spoke matters, right?
But see, yeah. But see, here's the thing. While all that is true, to me, that's part of the really Black. Because the people who didn't get that message.
Exactly. And if they didn't get the message, the question is, does it matter today? Because I can think of several people whom are doing well in life who didn't get the message, right?
And but see, that's part. Okay, so you're making the point. That's the point I'm making. So that's why I said we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back rather than 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. There has been progress. I mean, there has. I just say that it's still so many things that are looming. This is just a fight that will probably it will never end. It will never end.
Well, I just want to touch on this because we'll probably have to pick it up in the future. The bottom line is there has been change. There's been a change in our culture. There's been a change in our atmosphere.
Yeah, the culture for sure.
And I know, and I've discussed this with you because whether we're paying attention or not, it affects everything. It affects how we look. Yes. For me, it affects how I make my money. For you, it affects, we discussed this last week unknowingly. It affects where we choose to shop.
It does. Absolutely.
Yes. Because of what they allow their neighborhoods to
that
have.
Is so, yes, I'm disappointed. You're right. I don't feel like I even can shop in my neighborhood store anymore. And that's a sad situation. Situation.
Why not, friend?
Because it's just like the overwhelming culture is just, this is like, it's it's like not a popular thing to think or say, but I've realized I need to shop with people that are more like me culturally. When I'm with certain people, just the I can't put into words. It's like the mood or the demeanor, the manner. It's
Oh, so
off-putting. It's
well,
off-putting.
what are you not seeing? Like when you say like me, like what are you not seeing that's the identifier for
Okay,
you?
here's a prime example. Okay, I'm in Chicago. We
Mm-hmm.
keeping it under 100% for real. In the city itself, we're still a little too segregated. That's part of the problem. We probably need to go on and get over that hump and integrate these neighborhoods because I think that would do just it would make for an overall better experience. So when I'm out here at the podcast like I am today, I'm out here in an
Mm-hmm.
area to me that is it's a mixed area. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a much for me it's a much better experience because I see myself in people out here. Sometimes when I'm at home in the city, in a lot of cases I don't see myself because I think that some of our people have taken on this kind of like attitude or theme that I don't relate to naturally. I don't draw to. So then when I come out here, I mean, it could be in a simple experience, just like going to the store. If I come out here and I make a mistake and bump somebody's cart, the lady, no matter, or man, no matter what nationality the person is, they smile and say, "Oh, excuse me." They don't take it as anything. You bump somebody's cart in the place where I go to the store in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they'll say, "Oh, girl, no biggie." But sometimes you catch that eye, and you be like, "Did you really think I meant to bump your cart? I don't even know you. Why would I bump your cart?" It's like what? I mean,
I
you
know.
get that attitude, and it's like, really? We're in a
Yeah.
crowded store with big carts. Somebody's gonna bump
Yeah.
somebody's cart every now and then. I mean, it could even be the way somebody treats you at the meat counter. And I'm like, the lady working behind the meat counter is like looking at me. I'm talking to her, and she's like looking at me, and ignoring me. I'm like, you're looking right at me and not speaking to me. Nobody would do that out here. I'm like, what? So I'm like,
The meat counter, huh?
I mean, it's just, I'm like, this, and it's a small
I'm
thing,
sorry.
but it's just too much. I'm like, well, let me just shop out here because I can't do
So
this in the city shopping.
the atmosphere and the energy of the hood sometimes is off-putting. Is one of your words,
Well,
off-putting?
I don't draw to it, so I don't know how to get
Okay.
down in it. I mean, like, can I? Yeah, I can,
Yeah.
and I do.
Yeah.
But here's what you got to understand: I don't care to work that hard. I came in here to get some groceries. I want to get my groceries and leave, and not feel like I was, just getting into some kind of tiff or argument with some chick in the store, or some chick thinking I want her man because I couldn't reach the gum. And I said, "Excuse me, could you grab that gum?" I mean, I literally have to stand on shelves sometimes to grab something. So if somebody next to me taller, I might say, "Hey, can you grab that?" And it's not even personal. And old girls look at me like,
Listen, I personally will give you a thumbs up and 4 stars because I ain't asking nobody to reach for nothing for
"Tricia,
me. And I'm
because
a
you
short
can reach
girl.
everything."
No,
Try
ma'am.
being in a
No,
grocery
ma'am.
store where you
No,
really
ma'am.
can't reach something. You will need somebody to grab something for you. Sometimes you have to say, "Excuse me, can you grab it?" That's listen. At this point,
Listen,
we real talk. It's not.
I was in Walmart the other day and couldn't reach for something. I stand on that bottom shelf just like you do. We're only a couple inches apart, friend. I don't have the courage and the mindset to
But
ask
Tricia,
anybody to help me.
it's 9 degrees here. I have on hat, mask, scarf, and a
It's
down
okay.
coat.
I said I gave you 4 stars, man. What's wrong with you?
Okay. Anyway,
I'm
listen.
not challenging. I
Okay.
just want to say this part. I do identify with this. What stands out for me is in certain communities. I used to live in Chicago with you, right? Stony Island, very busy, high populated area. I've been self-employed for years and I used to live in Hyde Park. Listen, going into something as simple as a banking institution and being questioned about making a deposit, not a withdrawal, about having plexiglass in front of me,
Yep.
that is off-putting because I want to go and do business in an area in which I can go in and not have to be reminded that there are some things that can cause me harm, discomfort, or I'm not going to get the best service. So I agree with
And
you.
I'm gonna go. I will agree with you on that, because what
Yeah.
happens too is, even if there is no brush with anyone in the store, because of the situations, it's always on your mind. And so that itself is a burden, and it's even work. And it's just something I just don't care to do. I don't
And
care to do that.
I will say this because I don't want to not act as if I don't get it. I get it, as we always do have real talk. I'm in a southern state, and I talk to you about it all the time. I don't identify a lot with a few things, people, environments that I come in contact with, and you know that.
Right.
I literally have to choose an area where there's more fair complected, more white, more multicultural,
Mm-hmm.
and it's you guys, whom are listening, the identifiers. You got to choose an area where the name has something to do with like beaches, something like Whole Foods is in that area. You have to
Exactly.
choose, because for me, it's as simple as what I choose to dress like or how I wear my hair or whatever. Sometimes you do want to encounter some environments where you kind of see, a person who may, have some similarities and
Right.
strike up some kind of enjoyment
And
and conversation.
and the attitude may be it's not even an attitude. How about this? The mentality may be similar. It's the
Yeah.
mentality that you're looking for, to be with people that kind of match your mentality, and just not exactly, but just in the ballpark, because it kind of it diminishes the chance for some of these encounters that we don't want. And I had told you, this is really going into another lane, but I told you I was having trouble even finding things on television I like to watch with black people.
Yeah, well, I understand that. There was a time when I worked in a salon, and I worked in a salon with a barber, and he ended up being, a really younger guy. And he drew different kinds of people in, but I don't want to miss the point. The point is, while I was working in that environment, it was brought to me that they said, you got a credit card. I was like, what kind of credit card? They was like, a black card. I was like, oh. What is, what I'm saying? So they were like, listen, you get we give you a pass up in here. Like you get a charge card to be up in this environment and be welcomed into our conversation, because even the guys, the fellas, they're like, you not really like for real, all the way. And that thing is the realization that we are dealing with stuff. So great example, Martin. Martin is the funniest show on television. They do reruns.
Yeah.
I've never found it funny once they got to doing the comical, the physical part of the comedy, where the snotty nosed boy and the people start jumping through the window and Martin running back and forth.
You didn't find that
Listen,
funny.
no, my mom is like,
I still watch
man,
Martin though. I
listen,
do. I'm being
my mother
honest.
laughed so hard, Christine. She is on the patio and the people in the neighborhood can hear her. Like, your mother's back there having a
Laughing.
great time. I couldn't. And when I had the conversation with some other people, it was because the culture that he was bringing to the forefront, I couldn't identify. I didn't really identify with.
Oh, okay.
Because
Okay.
when we were in Chicago growing up, I just didn't see, I didn't. I wasn't there.
Now, when you say you didn't identify it, what, you didn't see that? What do you? I mean,
In
you
some
didn't.
ways, in some ways, no. And so when you say you're looking for things to watch, there are some things I can and can't watch because I don't fully connect. Now, I don't have to connect to everything, right? Because I like
What?
power
What? Well, right.
and
Well,
I don't
you're
know
right.
no,
But you want to connect to.
the jokes.
Well, you want to connect to the jokes, but also you want to
Yeah,
connect to the drama. What, like I told you before, and we'll probably have to hit this um
another time.
another time, because I think we got about 10 minutes left. But I'll just at
Okay.
least throw it out there, is that the over one of the so there's several things, but one of the things that's permeating to me within the black culture, especially with men. Now I feel, especially with women. Now I feel that men have things permeating too, but I will talk about the women because that's what I can relate to as women. And the theme is, it's like everybody's on, and if you have your children around, maybe turn this down when I just say this one term. Um, we everybody's trying to be a boss bitch. And I'm like, what is all of this? I'm like, huh? I mean,
Oh, geez.
Tricia, seriously,
Yes.
everyone
Yes.
is, the attitude is stank. The
The outfits. Don't forget those outfits.
the
girl.
outfits are like extremely revealing.
Yeah, and
No
fitted.
one's leaving anything to the imagination. We're showing off, and
Yeah.
everybody's like done up. Like, I mean, these people are done up like they're gonna be like they're in costume. They're in costume. Full. That's how they look, and they're just being
Full face.
themselves. Full face, just
Of
the whole.
makeup.
So what happens is when you start watching this stuff, you might even be able to do the appearance, but coupled with that stank attitude, I'm like, why would I be watching this tonight? This is not giving me a good feeling.
So you're not a housewife franchise
Tricia,
girl.
or let me
Love
tell
and
you
Hip Hop
something.
girl.
Let me just tell you this. I know I'm in the minority. Do you know I've never watched one housewife series ever?
Okay.
It does nothing for me. It does. I tried to watch it. I even had one of my male friends tried to sit down there and watch it with me and said, "You don't like this?" And I was like, "No, why are we watching it?" Matter of fact, why are you watching it? That's why That's why I was looking at him. I'm like, "You are enjoying this?" So
I have a question for you, my friend.
I have
Well,
an
let me
answer.
volunteer this. I watched me some Housewives of Atlanta to a point, so I knew those people, and I enjoyed myself. I watched Love and Hip Hop and knew who Cardi B was before she was famous, so I get some P's and Q's for that. I had the
Oh,
tolerance.
you
to
get real P's and Q's. Oh, for sure.
What?
I'll give
I
you that.
enjoyed myself.
I'll give you that.
And I think that you didn't watch the Housewife franchise, but now that I'm it's coming back to my recollection, you like those doggone Texas people.
But look, it's not Texas.
Ain't no but.
It's not Texas. Listen, if you're going to talk about what I like, you got to get the area right.
What is it?
Ain't it Huntsville, Alabama?
Okay.
That's the only one I've ever been able to watch.
Okay. And I couldn't take Melody.
I know you couldn't.
Right.
But no, seriously, I'm not able to do it because here, let me just say this real quick. It's this boss bitch thing we have permeating.
But Melody's a boss bitch.
I said I could watch.
I can't take her.
I said I could watch one. She's the only one. Okay, but let me finish this point up real quick though.
Okay.
No, say what I want you, because I'm not gonna lose my point.
No,
so you go with yours.
No, tell me why you love it, because you're telling me, and I'm not.
I don't want to talk about why I love it. I want to talk about why I can't watch anything else.
Because Melody came into the game of Boss B, and she ended up being that other boss, dressing and looking a fool with the bronze.
Right.
And the
but what I'm suggesting to you is this: just overall, if you're not a person that draws to that, it's hard to find yourself in TV today. To me, if you're black,
So perfect. I wanted to pull out a word you used.
Okay.
You said that you knew you were the minority. And I'm okay with that.
For sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are technically the minority in a lot of different ways. Black history, right? Minority women, minority, feminism, color. The minority that you're speaking about is because the culture has thinned out in so many different ways. We can't really see a lot of things. And I think one of the words that you had used before is that you wanted to be able to speak to the middle.
Of course.
And what is the middle then if we are no longer identifying with the full culture that is the minority?
Well, the middle for me are just the people who still, you like nice things, you are looking to make some achievements, but you still enjoy the simple things. It's okay to still enjoy the simple things. Everything doesn't have to be over the top. I was watching The View the other day, and they were showing where Rihanna had revealed that she was pregnant, and someone had literally said on the show, Rihanna brought simplicity back to announcing pregnancy.
That's
you know
beautiful.
why I appreciated that? Because everything we do today is so over the top. Today, with the way we are, it's almost like you don't have to be anything. It's what you appear to be that's important.
Posturing.
So
It's
we're
the posture.
posturing more so than we are. I
And
mean,
can
even
I
with the
just,
hair, we pretend to have, instead of having nice hair, we just pretend to have nice hair. It's
don't say it. Don't bring it. Don't bring it to me because I'm going to start laughing because of
okay.
a video I watched the other day as a hairstylist. I watched a lot of different things
Yeah,
on
we just
Instagram.
pretend. We just pretend on
Yeah.
everything. And then this
Listen,
thing with this, when I go back to saying, when I talk about this boss bitch, it's because you see it all over social media. A lot of women today, instead of like smiling and being nice and welcoming, they're more, I'm the shit, you know. and,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and, and the
yeah.
reason it bothers me, I'm gonna say this one thing and I'm gonna let you get in. Tracy, when I was coming up, for real, all jokes aside, women that have it going on, they ain't got to tell you because you can see it. You can see it. I don't have to preach to you and tell you I'm a boss bitch because you can see me moving and you admire what I'm doing because I'm doing something that's credible. If you got to tell me you're a boss bitch, you ain't one.
Okay. So I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. And I'm just going to say this. So I want to be clear that we're not talking about class. We're talking about culture.
Oh, it's
We're
culture.
not talking.
Absolutely.
We're not
Absolutely
talking about.
100% culture.
We're not talking about posturing. That's what we're saying is annoying. We're talking about presentation. Presentation that is authentic to what you do.
Exactly.
Remember, I used to say in the salon, I service diamonds in the rough. People didn't know that those ladies have that kind of reach, that kind of capability, the things, the life, So I get that.
Yeah, because
I
they
think,
didn't perpetrate or, put on per se. They were just who they were.
correct. And I think, when we're talking about just, what is the middle and why we say that we'd like to just sit in the middle is that in case anyone missed it, I want to share this.
Because we missed it.
Listen, I'm a lean into the mic. Listen, people, we love the culture that we were raised up in. Christine and I have a little bit of everything.
Absolutely.
Listen, I watched Whitney Houston's funeral. This is off subject, but I'm going to tell you what I was thinking while I was watching it. Thank you, Lord, for introducing me to the Black church. And I
Yep.
understood the whole funeral, the procession, the people. I love my brothers. I know what it is like when I see them standing on a corner. I'm like feeling like an Angie Stone song. We have been in the hood. I have been in the projects in Chicago. I have traveled, and we love our culture. But there is now an unspoken middle lane, and we're traveling in that middle lane. So we would love to, in the future, describe to you and define what that middle lane looks like.
Are you
For
banking on
us.
something, dear?
I am so sorry. I got
You
excited.
got excited.
I'm a
Oh,
desk.
I just hear you banging.
I'm so sorry. I was begging on my desk. But yeah, the middle is important because we need to talk about what we identify with, what we know from the past is nostalgic and necessary, and what we know that's new that we may not understand, but we gotta, embrace it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where we're at because we missed it.
And I would say the same thing. I love the culture. I live in Chicago in an African American neighborhood, basically predominantly because I choose to be there. That's where I want to be. I like being around our people, but I do want to see myself in our people. And because I do care, when I don't see myself in a where I thought I did, I do take the time to dissect it and figure out why. Because it does matter. It really does matter to me. And I want to be able, I want to be able to relate. Real quick, I'll tell you this before we wrap, is that I live next door to a building, and I love the simplicity of watching those guys. I love it. There are some guys next door to me. Now, this is a building with, families, but the guys, Tricia, today, they still get together and they put a card table in the backyard. They don't even really have a back porch. They put that card table in that grass, get that card game going, drink that drink, turn that TV. They watching basketball anytime the weather's permitting. They're outside watching. Somebody's got a grill. They don't have a bunch of sides and elaborate stuff. They got some hot dogs and maybe some chicken, and they're eating, talking ish, laughing, drinking. It is nothing. It's just simple, good fun.
I just want to add this into it. I visited you and saw that. And
Did you
please
see
don't
the
miss,
guys?
please
Girl,
don't miss the music that comes from the
yes.
backyard. Because I
Sometimes I
sit
go
out
on the
there for
back
the music.
porch just so I can
Yeah,
watch them, just so I can.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
just because they're within earshot, just so I can
yeah.
hear them because it just reminds me of simple, good fun. It's not overdone. They're not trying to be somebody they're not. They're not. They're just out there watching the game. You know, I'm a sports fan, so that also helps. But anyway, you know, I'm at a point where I'm thinking we probably done maxed out our time, and Earl is being nice.
Thank you, Earl. We appreciate
So
you.
listen,
Thank you for listen. Thank
we
you, Earl, for letting the sisters have a long time to talk this week.
so I think we better wrap. But what I thought was maybe we better tell the people how they can reach us and to like and follow the page, even though there's nothing on it, unfortunately. But we are trying to get. I'm really thinking within the next couple of weeks, definitely month, we should really have that social media piece. Um, at least much better than it is today. So what I would say is this: we are the this is the We Missed It podcast. If you want to email us about anything we said today, if you have any topics, any feedback, we're open to it. We welcome it, want it. It is we missed it podcast@gmail.com. Now, Tricia, do you want to drive them to the social media or what are you thinking? Should
Yes, that'll be great. I actually am noticing that I went Facebook Live even though you didn't, and we were getting questions. So my apologies.
Oh my gosh.
I am
We
so
didn't even get
sorry,
to
people.
answer the
I
people.
was so busy paying attention
Tree
because it was our
Cox.
first week on Zoom that I apologize to people. So we are Facebook. We missed it a podcast, and we are on Instagram. We missed it on Instagram. So my apologies. Please
And,
meet us again next week.
right. And with Earl, we can be found on YouTube at intellectualradio.com. The name of the podcast, of course, is We Missed It, but it's also everywhere that you can get podcasts. You would just go to Intellectual Radio and then you would look for the We Missed It podcast. So we really are looking forward to some interaction with our listeners. We want to hear from you. You got one more thing, Tricia, before Earl
One more
wraps?
question.
Uh-huh.
Please ask Earl. I believe the name has been changed to Intellectual Radio /podcast or Intellectual Podcast as well. So if that's a change that they're working on, I'd love for him to confirm that.
Earl, do you know? He said, yeah, he'll let you know. He
Okay.
did say that.
All
Okay.
right.
Yep.
Okay.
Girl, I hadn't talked to you all week. It's been real. I enjoyed it. It has.
Realer for some than others.
Yeah, you I didn't know where this was going today. I got to tell you. Because it was so much on my mind. But all right. Well, listen here. I will be talking to you. And I just say I thoroughly enjoyed you. You know, I love you.
Love you more. And until the music turns on, I just want to say today, thank you, Christine Johnson. You are a fantastic friend.
You are two tricks. Bye.
You really are. Bye, girl.
No, no, no. I don't believe that I gotta say